Okay, we getting ready to go live. Okay.
Welcome to tonight's Budget Town Hall meeting. I'm your Fulton County Commissioner, Natalie Hall of District 4. This year has been unprecedented as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And because of the impact the pandemic had on Fulton County, we have a community facing greater needs because of this health crisis. Coronavirus has placed a huge demand for public health services as both residents and businesses continue to struggle. During this budget town hall meeting, we will detail how funds were allocated in 2020 to combat this crisis, and we detail the county budget priorities in the upcoming fiscal year. In order to detail the budget and show those priorities, we have members of the Fulton County Finance team here to walk you through the 2021 Fulton County budget. Let me introduce you to them. We have Sharon Whitmore, our Chief Financial Officer. Sharon.
Hi, Commissioner Hall. Thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Sharon. And we also have James Herserl, the Budget Manager from Finance Department.
Good evening, Commissioner Hall. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you so much, James. And we have Hakeem Oshikoya, Director of Finance.
Compliments of the season, Commissioner Hall, to you and your constituents. We're happy to be part of this event, ready to answer any question that your constituents might have.
Thank you so much. And as a reminder, we want to hear from you. We will be reviewing for questions via the live stream on YouTube, through the Zoom chat, and via email sent to fulton.communication@fultoncountygA.gov. And let me say that one more time. It's fulton.communication@fultoncountygA.gov. Tonight's session is focused on the budget. So if you have questions on another topic, we will still answer to the best of our ability. If we can't answer it, we will take your information and respond as soon as possible. So on to our Fulton County presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. I will take over control and I will present the PowerPoint presentation that was originally provided to the Board of Commissioners during our presentation of the budget back on November 16th. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction to the presentation. This overall budget was a process that began earlier during 2020. And of course, it has taken in consideration all of the multiple variables and the current health emergency. And based on the situation, based on the outlook on how the county leadership is looking at the 2021 year, resources were allocated, and that is the product of the plan that was presented to the Board of Commissioners. The presentation today, it will be around 10 to 15 minutes, and it will take you through a high-level overview of our overall budget, which includes not only the general fund, but also multiple smaller funds, which are all operated by Fulton County. As we move through the presentation, then we will focus a little bit more into the general fund, which is what I called the brain and the heart of Fulton County. That's the fund that provides most of the services, including all of the justice-related services, including the courts and our health and human services. So as we move forward, we will look at a 10,000 feet look at the budget. And at the end, I will guide you through our process through all of the different steps that we follow to finally present the board with a plan for the following year. So let me start pretty quick with an overall view of the budget for Fulton County. What you can see in front of you is on the left side is a list of the different funds that Fulton County manages. And you will see a time series between 2019 and 2021 of what the budgets will look like. So this will include all of the different services. For example, the first budget that you will see is what we call the general fund. This is our biggest fund, and this is the area that is responsible for most services. As you can see on the slide, this budget has ranged from around $700 million back in 19 to a proposed budget that we looked into 2021 of approximately $785 million. As I go down the list, you will find some other funds like our airport fund, which is Charlie Brown. Down on Fulton Industrial, you will have our water revenue and water renewal funds, which are mainly our operations of the water system that the county runs. The water renewal is mostly capital related. Then you will move to Wolf Creek, which is practically managing the amphitheater. And this is a fund, and I will discuss shortly during the presentation, that as we move into 2021, it's a fund that actually will disappear. And you can ask some questions down the line if you have any questions or so on. Special Services District, really that was consolidation of multiple funds that maintained municipal type services when we had multiple areas that were unincorporated. At this time, we only have one last unincorporated area, which is consolidated in what we called our Fulton Industrial Fund, which is right underneath. Then you will find our 911 fund. That's what we use to manage all of the 911 services. A bond fund, which is responsible for paying debt service for our library program. Our risk fund, which mainly consolidates all of the resources associated with our self-insurance. So the county actually self-insured. We put funding aside for any potential contingencies associated with settlements, workers' compensation, and some other likely litigations. And the last one we have is special revenue, which are a consolidation of multiple smaller funds that have specific objectives. So in a nutshell, if I look at the total amount of the budget, you will see that the budget for the year 2021 currently is proposed at around 1.2 billion, which is similar to the amount that was proposed in 2020 and is slightly higher than what we have in 2019. Let me say that as I move through a little bit more of the detail, our 2021 budget takes in consideration the current situation, as I will explain. This portion of the presentation goes deeper into what I call the brain and the heart of Fulton County, which is our general fund. So given the situation during 2020 and our vision of how the current health emergency was going to develop into 2021, we run into, let's call it an adventure of trying to understand what are our core services and our core cost within the general fund. And based on this approach, what we try to identify is what is the budget that we need to be able to run operations in Fulton County at our current rate. Based on that, we were able to identify $708 million as our number. And the question that we have is, what is included in these $708 million. It's a significant amount. But what is included there? So from a 10,000 feet, these $708 million include all of the positions that are filled in the county. So that means all positions filled will remain in the county. It also includes all recurring operational costs. So all of the costs and all of the different contracts that we have in place will remain to be funded as we move into 2021. It also includes capital expenses associated with specific projects. And we have launched this program based on the issuance of debt or bonds. And we have budgeted for the debt service associated with those bonds. That includes 3 tranches of Acura, 1, 2, and 3. We also have included funding for our pay-as-you-go capital to ensure that our county facilities remain in good shape, and have set aside funding for our roadmap in IT, which includes both infrastructure, IT infrastructure, and cybersecurity. That $708 million also includes new debt service for a new clinic that the county is participating in this joint venture with the Grady Hospital. So new debt service has been included in the $708 million. And in addition to that, we have some annual incremental costs that include pension costs, to healthcare costs, to some of those contracts that are significant to the county, like our sheriff medical contract. But once we were able to identify what that core base of our budget was, we moved forward into trying to identify what resources the county will need in 2021 to be able to respond to the current pandemic by assuming the same level of effort that we are doing currently during 2020. So based on a thorough approach and review of our services provided during 2020 and our response, we have set aside $42 million as part of our proposed budget to do in, let's call it in a nutshell, 2 kind of main areas. The first one is to be able to react and be able to be proactive at the same time in association with our testing and vaccination efforts. The funding has been dedicated towards that as one of our core investments for this emergency response reserve. And second, we have also set aside funding within the $42 million for our operational response, which includes the provision of PPE to employees, making sure that we have all of our buildings clean, making sure that we also are able to provide a virtual environment, not only to our employees, but potentially some services so that we can maintain our services to our citizens. And we are also ensuring that our warehouse, where we keep all of our equipment, stays in good shape so that we can provide the different needs and demands to all of the different facilities, employees, and citizens of Fulton County. So right now we have looked at $708 million, $42 million between those two. We have already taken care of around $750 million out of our $785 million general fund budget. Moving on, we move into a number of additional items that were included in the budget. So let me give you a little bit of the background of the first item you see at the top. It says add vacancies back 14 million. During the 2020 year, given the uncertainty in respect to the economy and the impact that the economic contraction was going to have on property taxes, the county and the Board of Commissioners implemented a policy of spending controls to ensure the county was able to finance and to cash flow all of the different needs and demands for the county. One of those spending controls that was implemented was taking all of the vacancies at the time, only vacancies, and those vacancies were placed on hold. In other words, no position could be hired unless there was a thorough review by the executive team. And in those cases, those positions could be brought on board only if those were really critical positions during that point in time. As we move into 2021, we are somewhat lifting that restriction. So the positions that remain vacant at this point have been funded in the 2021 budget. So that opens a little bit of the opportunity for some of the different departments to take advantage of some of those positions and being able to hire. However, senior leadership will still, based on the current plan, keep a close eye into the positions that are currently vacant and what is being filled on a periodic basis. The next item that you see is our elections. This is one of those items that has caught the attention of the entire world, to say the least, and is the current runoff election for the Senate. As part of the 2021 budget, we have set $6.5 million to be able to successfully run the election. Some of the funding that was allotted to the elections department will also be used to cover some of the incremental operating costs associated with new equipment that was purchased during the year. So this $6.5 million will be used kind of twofold to make sure that we are able to run a successful election for our runoff election and be able to cover some of the incremental costs of the election. Moving to the following item, this is a salary compensation adjustment, which was originally agreed by the Board of Commissioners as part of our 2020 budget. This was before, of course, the health emergency. As part of our internal controls, trying to make sure that we kept our finances in check during 2020, we held this program back. And what we're doing in 2021 is bringing it back as one of our programs during the year. One of the important things to note about this program is it will result in salary adjustment for some of those employees that have significant tenure with the county. That's a compensation that has been earned. And the goal of the program is to be able to ensure that those individuals that have tenure with the county are compensated accordingly. And the last item that you will see on this page, it's a $3.8 million allocation. And this has been exclusively allocated to all of our courts and justice system to ensure that we can reopen our justice system back during 2021. As you can imagine, due to the pandemic, a significant number of services and some of the programs that are run by our elections are actually on standby or have built backlogs as a result of the current situation. The goal of this funds or this funding is to ensure that we can review some of those backlogs and ensure that the court can reopen successfully. So this is a rundown again of some of the additional items that were added to our 2021 budget. And let me continue with the last set of additions and changes. We categorized the last section of the changes to the budget as other allocations. And this really includes a large list of different items which range from additional funding for behavioral health services to increases to our grants match amount. This grant match amount represents programs that the county and the federal government run jointly. We receive a specific amount from the feds and they require the county to match that amount or contribute certain amount to ensure that the program can continue. So we have received some increases for our matching amounts, and that's what you will see as part of the 2021 budget as well. We have additional contractual increases in our facilities, also food contract for the jail system. We have added additional e-resources for the library. We are also going to continue to tackle some of our food deserts in Fulton County by continuing to fund Fulton Fresh. We will supplement some of the services, some of the staff that we have at Magistrate Court, also additional resources to the medical examiner, and we will provide additional operational money to our tax commissioner and our tax. The last thing that we will be looking into 2021 is at the lessons that we received from our current pandemic, the current situation, and the outlook as we look into the future. So part of that process will entail what we call reimagining the way that we provide services and the way we deliver those services and what is to the greater benefit of the residents of Fulton County. What that means is that there may be a potential change or change into the way that we provide services from a more physical aspect to a more virtual aspect. All of this will be something that will be discussed by senior leadership over the next few months in order to come up with a much more robust plan in terms of what those changes can entail. And of course, some of these changes may be something that happen over multiple years. But I think this overall covers kind of like the main ideas, the main themes that were included as part of the budget. And the next section of the presentation will be more like a rundown of our budget process and just to show you where we stand at this point as part of the budget approval by the Board of Commissioners. This is a 10,000 feet allocation. You go from, if you recall, we're talking about what are our core expenses, the 708, and all the different squares basically show you the increase in the budget based on the different things that were added to the budget throughout our assessment and the development of our plan. And we have explained each of those different items separately. This is what outlines our budget process for the year. Of course, it starts on September 25th, as you can see here, but in reality, our budget process really starts almost at the beginning of the year. At that point in time, we are approving the budget. We approved the budget in January. And once the budget is approved and departments start deploying the plan, at that point in time, we start thinking about, okay, what are those additional things that we will need as we look into the following year? But this is really a full year-long plan. And one of the things that have been implemented by senior leadership is that we are not looking just at a year-by-year plan, but we're actually looking at a financial budget plan that goes over multiple years. But let me get you back to our kind of budget schedule and where we stand at this point. So September 25th, we had departments submitting budget requests to the office. That we have a conversation with the deputy COOs, which will outline what the priorities were. And the deputy COOs meet with senior leadership to discuss some of the budget requests for the year. We have a number of meetings and conversations with senior leadership to make the final determination of what the allocations will be for the year. Around the beginning of November, we start planning and developing our budget document, which we submit to the Board of Commissioners by November 15th. We then hold a budget presentation right around that time. In this year was on November 18th. In December, we hold a mandatory public hearing, which this year took place on December 2nd. Between November 18th, of course, and final approval of the budget, which happens in January, the Board of Commissioners has the opportunity, or they have the opportunity to make changes to the budget. At this point, we are still going through that review and assessment by the Board of Commissioners, and we're holding some of these virtual meetings. And as we move into early January, that's when the Board of Commissioners will have the opportunity to make final changes and of course approve the budget. It can happen during the first meeting, which will be January 6th, or the subsequent meeting, which will happen during the middle of January. So that being said, I think that is the end of my presentation today. And I don't know if you would like to open for questions at this time, or if we move to another speaker.
Okay, well, thank you so much, James, and our finance team for reviewing the budget and providing details on how funds are to be allocated within the county. I'm sure many of our citizens may have questions about the budget presentation, and we want to hear from you and hear your thoughts, because we're here to serve you. And these programs and initiatives are your priorities. Now's the time to hear questions you may have. And I actually went into the chat and reminded everyone that we have on Zoom to please go into the Q&A section of Zoom to ask your questions. And right now we have, hey, Terry Ross, I know you. So Terry has provided 2 questions. His first one is, these are revenues, and he's asking you about a portion of your presentation, James. Yeah, that was around 6:07.
James, you're much.
So he was asking were those revenues, it was earlier in the presentation.
Okay.
It was around 6:07, 8.
No, those are expenses.
Yeah, let me
Put the
show
page
you really quick. So this slide represents the expenditure budget that we have for Fulton County. The expenditure budget is structured, of course, based on what we project to be our revenues for the year, and if there is a need to use fund balance from the previous year in order to develop our expenditure footprint. So what you see in front of you will represent, or does represent, our expenditure footprint.
Okay, and the next question is, where are the percentages of increase, decrease from 2020?
I have really not added to the presentation the percentages. If we look at the overall budget itself, we have an increase that is less than 1% in the expenditure budget when we look at the general fund. And if we look at the overall fund, we actually, the overall budget, we actually have a reduction that is actually less than 1% as well.
Right, so you don't have the percentages of increases and decreases for 2020 that you can provide an answer to this constituent?
So I don't have it in the presentation at this time, but we can definitely find a way to provide that information subsequently.
Okay, so we'll, if you can send that information to me at natalie.hall@fultoncountyga.gov. Terry Ross is the former NPU chair. And so we can get it over to him. And
No problem.
I'm trying to see. Oh, wait, do we have any questions from the other sites?
Commissioner Hall, this is Jessica. I can tell you that we do not have any questions right now on email. I believe Demetrius is monitoring YouTube. We can ask if he has any questions. And there are 2 more in the Q&A chat if you'd like us to read those.
Oh, okay, wait a minute. I missed that. Let me go back. Okay, yes, I see. Ray Jones asked, what is special revenue?
So The special revenue funds, it's a consolidation of multiple smaller, let's call it cost centers, for which the use of the funds in that specific, let's call it cost center, has a specific purpose and cannot deviate from that use. So all of the revenues that are received by those little funds are the really small ones. All of those funds actually are only and can only be used for a specific purpose that has been established and authorized by the Board of Commissioners and is outside of our general fund.
And then Terry Ross has another question. He asked, percentages of line items, please. Percentage of line items, please.
So I'm assuming, Commissioner Hall, that it's similar to the previous question where they would like to probably see changes in the expense or the proposed budgeting expenses in between 2020 and 2021.
He said yes.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
Commissioner Hall, I also received, this is Jessica again, I received one question via email from a constituent wanting to know if we would make the slides available to the public. So we could certainly work with the finance staff and get the slides and post them online so that anyone who's watching would be able to see those.
Absolutely.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have a question from a constituent concerning the Fulton Fresh, because we have been out distributing so much fresh produce during the COVID-19 pandemic. They want to know specifically, are we going to continue to do the amount of distribution since COVID-19 is still on the rise? And have we allocated budget funding based on 2020 budget to continue that effort? Because I know in my district alone, it was a significant increase. And I just want to make sure myself too, are we actually budgeting for that? Because I know that it was beyond anything we've ever done before.
So I may need a little bit of assistance probably from Anna because I'm not completely certain if some of the additional services in 2020 were aligned to our CARES response at the same time that they were our Fulton Fresh program. So I know the Fulton Fresh program will maintain or be around the same level of funding that we had in 2020. But I'm not completely certain if additional CARES funding this year were dedicated in one way or another towards supplemental of Fulton Fresh.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioner Hall. This is Anna. James, thank you for the question. I do not recall there being any additional allocation to Fulton Fresh from CARES. But Commissioner Hall, to respond to your constituent, Fulton Fresh, which is our 4-H program, is fully funded for 2021. So the same levels of service provided in 2020 will be repeated in 2021.
Okay, so that is a concern of mine because the funds that were allocated in 2020 is definitely not going to be what was expended in 2020 because we saw an increase in the need, and I can probably have my team just go back with Vaughn over the request that came through my office, and it was the increase. I can't even explain to you how huge that increase was, but I'm absolutely sure that there is no way that what was originally allocated in the 2020 budget is what they used to accommodate the number of requests, because they not only did their normal, their Fulton Fresh mobile market calendar for the year, but they also provided fresh produce for requests that were coming in from organizations, churches, senior centers, and for these events, these giveaway events in parks and parking lots. So I do want to make sure that we really take a look at the need and make sure we address it in the budget for 2021. Hoping that the vaccine really does, make a significant impact and decrease the COVID numbers. But right now they are still on the rise, and it's very concerning, and people are still unemployed and still hungry. So I agree with the constituent on, we do need to just make sure we are aware and checking on that.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
this is Akeem. I'm thinking that there might have been some community partners that we provided CARES funds to, which probably did everything that you were talking about in terms of providing produce and boxes of foods and all of that kind of thing. They might have done them through our community relief program. The funding that we provided them.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that would have kind of supplemented the Fulton Fresh, the Cooperative Extension budget to help them provide
Exactly.
produce.
It's possible, yeah.
So so knowing that and reading recently about the fact that we're not going to get that funding into the state and definitely not into the county for 2021, how would we ensure that the budget is adequate enough to meet the need? I know, because I was the one who advocated for the mobile units. I know that they did have money for the mobile units. Is that money being kind of like reused and reallocated into the budget for 2021 so that we can address continuing with the food?
Commissioner Hall, the funds we have in 2020 budget for the mobile units, those are recurring funds that we had. And I'm not sure of where we are with acquiring the mobile units yet, but the fund has been set aside for us to buy the mobile unit. So it's not a recurring fund, it's a non-recurring.
It's
Just
not,
that part.
non-recurring.
Yes.
For the purchase of the vehicles, the original
Yeah.
funding was non-recurring. So
Non-recurring.
once the vehicle is purchased, then the funds won't be replaced in the following year once you have the vehicle. There may be a need for maintenance, there may be a need for gas, some of those subsequent items, but the main amount for the vehicle is not replenished once the vehicle is purchased.
So I would ask that you look at how much was actually spent on the fresh produce then, from not only the 2020 budget, but from, the CARES funding that you spoke about. And are we still going to meet that need? And do we have to do it by finding some funds somewhere within our accounts? Because
Commissioner, I was going to suggest that exact thing that you just stated, because it hadn't occurred to me until you mentioned it, that Cooperative Extension was more active than we typically see it based on the request of commissioners in 2020. So I did make a note for myself to get with Vaughn and get with Pamela to see whether or not they had any enhanced funding for 2020. So I will do that, and I will provide that response to you. I think tomorrow is a holiday, but by Monday.
Thank you so much, because that has been a question from a lot of the constituents because, you know, even the chairman requested 1,000 bags of produce because the need is that great. Oh, we have another question from Ray Jones. He says, how much of the budget is open, unallocated, and available to remedy poverty?
Um,
The budget is
so,
fully
I'm
allocated.
sorry.
Sharon?
Hi, Commissioner. Sharon Whitmore, Chief Financial Officer. I was just going to say that the budget is really fully allocated. We have earmarked about 42 million in the proposed budget that we're carrying forward into 2020 as part of our emergency response fund. We have put placeholders against those funds for various things, including continuing our health response and being able to address testing and the vaccination program, as well as being able to meet some of the county's continuing operational needs that are related to the pandemic, primarily being able to keep our facilities clean and sanitized during while we stay open and continue to provide services. And I think James mentioned earlier the acquisition of protective personal equipment for county staff, you know, who are, whoops, sorry.
Okay.
That's my child calling me. She's wanting to know what's for dinner.
I want to know what's for dinner too.
But so I mean, so realistically, we have already sort of earmarked what's been proposed in the budget, and our plan, as we stand right now, is to continue to monitor the progress of the pandemic and the progress and the effectiveness of the vaccine as we roll into 2021 and allocate those funds that we've set aside sort of month by month. So we have broadly developed a plan for the reserve that we're carrying forward. In addition to that, we'll be looking to other resources that are coming forward out of the federal stimulus package to help address, some issues around poverty and also the effect of the increase in unemployment rate and the underemployment rate as a result of the pandemic's effect on certain certain industries. So I mean that would be my response to that. I'm not sure if James or Hakeem want to add anything to that, but I guess.
And Sharon, the only other thing I would add is our normal funding of our community services program.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Which has, obviously food insecurity as a component of it. That is going to be fully funded for 2021 as well. In addition to whatever enhanced funding we put or set aside from CARES 2 or from any other community services funding related to the pandemic that we are providing in 2021.
And this is Hakeem, and I don't think we should overlook what we are also funding through the senior services programs.
Yeah.
Good answer.
And Commissioner Hall, if we take a closer look at the multiple departments that we have across the county and the different programs that we have, there may be some of the funding that is exclusively associated with poverty, but what I will say is that it's a significant amount of funding that is actually dedicated to programs that supplement many areas to support people that are in need. So just as an example, we fund Grady a significant amount of funding, and some of this funding could be classified as assisting individuals that are in need in the health area. We have also our Board of Health, which we contribute a significant amount of funding, and our Board of Health services individuals in need. Some of them may be people that could be in low-income individuals. Our Community Development Department also has multiple programs. And let's don't forget that across the court system, we have also multiple areas like child attorney. We also have family and family services, family and children services, which are also additional support for families, children in need. And many of these are people of lower resources.
Those were all outstanding responses, because I think when I read the question, I think part of the reason for the question is that we're presenting a budget that's forward thinking, and people may not know what we are already doing, which are part of the budget. Like the things that you just mentioned, we already allocate money towards services and programs in various departments that actually combat poverty. So that's something that the county just normally does, because we're mandated by the state to provide health and human services. It's just something that we normally do. So we are addressing poverty regardless of anything else that you've heard on this budget. The budget is being presented to you from a higher level. So your questions that are digging down into it are very good, because it just allows us to really kind of brag on ourselves. And Sharon and Anna and James and Hakeem, you did a great job answering that question. So let's see. I don't see any other questions. So if anybody has another question, please drop it in the Q&A. Let me see. I'm trying to see. They're saying that there's nothing on YouTube right now. I think that might be it. So I'm going to do one last. I'm sorry.
I apologize. I do see something on YouTube.
Oh, you see something? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this comes from Rita Harden. Says, good evening. Why has the Fulton industrial budget increased?
So let me bring you back to the presentation so we can take a quick look at the information. Let me see if you can see my screen at this point.
Yes.
So one of the issues that you see between FY20 and F121, fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 2021, is that the budget remains more or less at the same level. There is a slight increase in the budget across years. There were some increases in the area of security for the police department that may be calling for what part of that increase is. If the question is related between 2019 and 2020, part of the reason for the increase that you see across years is likely a change in the vision of what the FID corridor is as we move into the future, and additional investments that will be done in the FID corridor as we move into future years. That's what you can probably see from 2019 to 2020. From 2020 to 2021, you see that budget remaining more or less at the same level. I don't know if Sharon or Hakeem have other additional information.
No, James, I thought you addressed it very well. I was just going to say that for 2021, we did fund some new vehicles for the police department, which is what's making up the majority of the increase from 2020 to 2021. we funded 10 new patrol vehicles.
Okay, the next question is from Rita Hardin, is that what is the Special Services District?
That's a good question.
So the Special Services District, I'm calling that consolidation of the remaining resources that we have now available that are associated with unincorporated areas in the county that Fulton County used to manage. So this is, of course, many years ago. I think I was a little kid back then, but this included a number of unincorporated areas in North Fulton and in the south of Fulton, which we manage all of the municipal type services. I think around the beginning or middle of the 1990s, and I believe early 2000s, there was an effort by multiple areas to incorporate into cities. And at that point in time, they basically took responsibility for their own taxing authority and management of the municipal services, which meant that the county was not responsible for providing those services anymore. So some of the resources you see here, which is really a small amount comparatively to the rest of the budget, are just some of those remaining funds, which are currently just being utilized to pay out and settle some of the outstanding liabilities that come back from 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we're just paying those liabilities off as they come due.
Great job.
I have another question. This comes from Glenn Wooten II. He asked, what personnel growth is needed to reach the 2021 goals?
I'll take a stab at that. I think the most significant area where we have provided for personnel growth is in the funds that we've set aside for court reopening. As we plan for our courts to reopen so that we can begin to process the backlog of cases that have accrued during the shutdown in 2020, we recognized that we needed to add some additional personnel. One of our deputy COOs, Alton Adams, worked very closely with our court partners to identify what those resource needs were. They're working on a comprehensive plan for being able to address the backlog that has accrued, and we tried to make sure that we address the resources related to that. The other thing that we did to ensure that we could meet any personnel requirements is we provided funding for positions that have been vacated during 2020 or were already vacant when when the pandemic really hit, and we ended up holding our hiring activities for the year. So we've funded those vacancies, and I think James did a pretty good job of walking us through how we plan to address those. Our constitutional officers and elected officials will be able to hire and fill their vacancies as needed, and the rest will be subjected to a senior management review prior to being filled, to ensure that we are filling the positions that are most critical and necessary first.
Okay, Commissioner, I have one last question. It comes from Glenn Wooten II. Will remote work and not working in offices add back to the budget?
Good question.
What we have set aside some additional funds in order to address our virtual work environment needs. That's really a kind of a two-prong position. One is to provide and continue to improve the resources that are necessary for us to provide services virtually. So we're doing virtual court services now. So anything that we need to improve or enhance our ability to conduct court business virtually until such time as we are able to effectively return in person, we have some resources set aside to address that. We also have some resources set aside to ensure that we are able to provide our employees who are working remotely with the equipment and resources that they need. What we did during 2020 when we had to pivot and move from being in-person service oriented to being virtually service oriented is we sent our employees home to work with what resources we had available, which in some cases were older desktops that we were getting ready to surplus. We sent them home with those instead of a laptop. So we will be working on transitioning our remote employees to the appropriate equipment that they need to be fully effective in the remote environment, as well as being able to improve and enhance our virtual services that we're offering now to constituents.
Great answer, Sharon. I actually have another question in our Q&A area on Zoom. It's from Katidra Phillips. It says, the high juvenile delinquency recidivism rate is a problem in Fulton County. That continues to be a significant concern. Are we creating room in our budget for innovation in education and youth developmental programs? So that's a very good question. A lot of people that I've spoken to out in my district, they don't even know that we have an Office of Youth. They have no idea about our youth commissioners or anything else like that. So can anyone speak to how we are allocating budget funding for innovation in education and youth developmental programs?
I can take a stab at that, and then I'll ask for the finance department to maybe quantify from a budget standpoint. I think that is an important question, like you said, Commissioner Hall, because if we don't address youth, they become an expense to the county later on as inmates in our facility, as well as a burden on our criminal justice system. So I do want to acknowledge that question. And I also want to say that it is something that is on the executive team's mind. We have thought through many different ways of consolidating services and consolidating not just any services, all of the youth services that are happening. So if you think that like the sheriff's department has a youth program, the clerk has a youth program, the juvenile court has over 86, I think, when we enumerated their youth programs, but we're not sure about the synergy of those programs. And more importantly, we're not sure about the effectiveness of those programs. So one of the first things that the county manager charged us to do in 2020, which was somewhat disrupted by COVID, is to do an analysis of the effectiveness of the existing youth programs so that we could see what gaps we have in delivering services to the community. And I think that analysis needs to be done before we make a specific budget allocation. But I do want to acknowledge, as Commissioner Hall stated before, that many people don't probably readily know that we are doing services because we probably don't advertise them well, or in her words, take them to the public. But we have an extensive youth programming that happens in Fulton County through many of our different agencies. And I'd like also to go back to the funding that's provided in our community services program through our community services department. There is an entire section of that grant that is awarded to nonprofits that we partner with that do youth programming as well. So that was a very long way to say, one, we're assessing the effectiveness of our current programs, but we do have current programs that are funded across many different departments within Fulton County. And finally, those programs within departments are augmented by our partnerships with nonprofits through our community services program.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. That was a very good answer. And I just want to add that, you know, we do address youth in other areas like mental health and behavioral health, developmental disabilities, through our Board of Health and our Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. We have Chris 180, which helps us, they help us do a lot of work in those areas. And so there's a lot of things. I think we just need to figure out how to brag a little more and get that information out to the public. Okay, so we have 7 minutes left for Q&A. And are there more questions on the, what is that, YouTube?
I believe that's it for YouTube.
All right. And I don't see any in the Q&A. So last call to our attendees on Zoom and YouTube. If you have any questions, ask them now or forever hold your peace.
And Commissioner Hall, if we have 1 minute, I may be able to guide the audience through how to access budget information online really quick so they can see where they can actually go in.
Yes.
Look at the entire documentation on the proposed budget, which includes details on the allocations to different or multiple programs and how the senior leadership presented the plan to the Board of Commissioners. So if it's okay with you, I'll just steal it for a minute, if that's okay.
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Let me just take the screen for 1 quick minute. I hope you can see it. Let's see. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
So to go and be able to access budget information for Fulton County is simple. If you are on your search engine, you can just write Fulton County budget. Simple. That's kind of really easy. And the first link that you could find on Google will be Fulton County Government, and it has next to it the budget. You just need to click on it. And it will bring you to our new website where you will be able to find multiple and different type of information about all of our services, but including there, you will find a specific part that is associated with our budget. So as you go through the document, you will find budget documentation for each of the years. The 2021 proposed budget will be found here, and you should be able to just click in the document and the full proposed budget will be available for you to review online. And this is just a copy of what the proposed budget looks. This is the document that was provided to the Board of Commissioners. It has the message with our plan, our accomplishments during 2020, our outlook for 2021. And as you go through the document, you will find most of the, well, I will say all of the information that we discussed today, in addition to more detailed information in terms of each of the departments under allocations and the programs within each department. In addition to that, it will also show you how the different resources in the county were allocated among our different priority areas. So this is kind of in a nutshell where you can find all of the go-to information about the budget, and you can access the information here with the exception of the percentages request that we have. We will provide that to Commissioner Hall so that we can deliver that information to those individuals that requested the information.
Thank you, James. That was great information for our constituents. And I don't see any more questions and answers. So Jessica,
Yes, Commissioner.
so you're gonna share, oh, well,
I think we handled my part of the, you did a beautiful job. Thank you so much.
oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, you handled it like a pro. I was just the understudy.
I was just going with the flow. But I want to thank everyone for watching tonight's Budget Town Hall. It is our goal to be fiscally responsible with your taxpayer dollars while we reach the communities of Fulton County with services such as providing activities for our seniors, operating elections in Fulton County, reaching communities of need with public and behavioral health services, and just so much more. I hope through our transparency and presenting the budget tonight that you can see that because we care, we serve. On behalf of District 4 team and Fulton County's employees, good night and have a very happy new year. Thank you, everyone. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Same
you.
to you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Sure.
And now I have to figure out why my mouse is not working.
Thank you.
Thank you, just shut me off.
Take care. Have a good one.
You too. Log me out, somebody.